I want to speak right now to the person watching this who is either high on weed or not high, but struggling with weed, struggling with controlling its use, thinking you might have a problem, but maybe not really sure. I wanted to share my journey with it uh, because I struggled with it for a very long time. And I didn't think that I would be able to stop using it. Um, Cannabis addiction or substance abuse disorder, which is what it's called now generally because the word addiction carries a lot of stigma. Um, it's hard to take it seriously because I think more than any other drug, or maybe cannabis is the only drug where it's it's kind of seen as a bit silly, a bit funny. There are stoner comedies. Um, it's the drug more than any other that's likely to elicit humor and um, that can sort of make it harder for one to decide, like, is this a real problem for me? A lot of people say cannabis, weed, it's not addicting, you can't get addicted to it, or you can only get dependent on it, not addicted, or it's only um, psychologically addicting, not physically addictive. And there's truth to all of these, I think. But if you're watching this and maybe you're high right now, because I know it's funny, I would smoke and then I'd go on YouTube and I'd search up how to quit smoking because I couldn't function without it. Um, I woke up and I needed it. I needed to wake and bake. And it helped calm me. It helped me feel relief. It helped me feel okay, really, like just okay and settled enough so that I could concentrate. Even though it made my concentration worse, it also made it better because it calmed me in a weird way. And you might know what I'm talking about. Um, there's a subreddit called Leaves, and if you haven't come across it, I highly recommend going on it. Reading people's stories, honestly, how they struggle. There's so many stories of people who will say, weed ruined my life. And I would say that was true of me for a long time. And there were times where I wanted to give in and smoke again. Maybe I had, managed to stay off it for a few days and it's really hard. But I would read stories of people who struggled, and it was essentially the same thing. I related so much to it. And it made me remember that, okay, this is a serious thing, cannabis. It's not a joke. Sure, people don't take cannabis addiction as seriously as they do with the harder drugs. But when you know, right? You know when you're addicted to it. Um, and I was in denial that I was addicted to it for a long time because so many people told me that you can't get addicted to it. Um, I would define addiction broadly as the use of a substance or the engaging of a behavior that interferes with other areas of your life negatively, creates problems in areas of your life, um, it's really that, and it negatively affected my relationships, my mental health, um, my relationship with myself. Um, for a while, I was able to be functional, and I could hold down a 9 to 5 job and smoke after, but I would basically neglect everything else. Chores and things would pile up. And that part of me that just wanted to withdraw within myself and just smoke alone, it just fed that, and it just became a cycle. And it's it's so difficult to describe the relief that you get when you smoke and inhale and hold for dear life. And if I were to describe how it made me feel, it made me feel relaxed, relieved, open, engaged, curious, um, wanting to connect with myself, with others, even though I generally prefer to smoke alone. Um, but it really just fundamentally helped me feel okay, like things were going to be okay. It was a soothing mechanism. And I think a lot of us use it that way. And there's a lot of people who can smoke in moderation. Um, and if you can, all the more power to you. There's part of me that wish I could, but I know I can't. I've accepted that I can't after I don't know how many times I tried to control it. Um, Try to keep it to just weekends or once a month, or insofar as I tried to control it, it would just rebound, and I just wasn't able to. And the degree to which you can control an addiction, it becomes less and less clear that you can control an addiction consciously, because people say it's just a choice, right? And I think that there's truth to that, but you're not just a conscious being who just decides what they want and does that. You have deeper, older brain structures that prioritize establishing equilibrium, that prioritize a sense of relief, prioritize feeling safe, feeling regulated. And it's sort of like telling someone to not scratch an itch, although that example doesn't really come close to describing the grip of addiction. It really is a chokehold. Um, the strange thing about addiction is it actually masquerades as freedom, and it feels like life is a cage. You've been living in a cage your whole life, and the only way to open the gate of that cage is to smoke. And when you smoke, you feel free. That's the illusion. The reality is the opposite. It's that you are free, and when you smoke, you willingly walk into a cage and lock the door behind you. Um, it makes your life smaller, although it gives you the illusion that your life becomes bigger with it, right? Because you become more creative, open-minded. You start getting all these ideas of what you want to do, who you want to be, and movies are so much better. Food is so much better. Music is, oh my God, music is it's a religious experience listening to music on cannabis. Um, but that's the problem. It's so good that you don't need anything else in your life. You don't need relationships. You don't need anyone. You don't need any other thing. You don't need to try any other thing or grow. All you need is to sustain this smoking habit because it's your everything. And I haven't tried the harder drugs, but I imagine that that's sort of what it is like to be addicted to a harder drug. You know, we look at someone, you know, the stereotype is someone on the street smoking crack and they're disheveled and skinny, and you know, that stereotype that a lot of us carry. And we think, how can you let yourself get to that point? And all that person cares about is getting high. But we don't understand, if we could be in their body and in their experience, we would realize what a hell their life feels like, and how smoking or whatever they do, how it frees them, how it makes them feel like they're okay. Um, and at the end of the day, that's what we all want, is to feel okay. And that's what we deserve. It's a need, it's a psychological need. And for many of us, we didn't have regulated parents. Many of us, some of us were abused, but many of us were just, we grew up in environments that were not emotionally safe, emotionally chaotic, unpredictable. Um, and that's enough to create what we call childhood trauma. Um, the brain develops very quickly in those first few years. And if there's a lack of stability in the home, the brain can't develop properly. Um, the brain doesn't learn to regulate itself. And it's not until much later in life that these issues appear. Like I went through school sort of okay. I moved around a lot. Generally speaking, I wasn't a good student though. I did poorly in school. Um, I dropped out of engineering, and this is another thing. Um, Many of us who have addictions to weed will be diagnosed with multiple things: ADD, depression, anxiety, maybe personality disorders, even bipolar. And it's not for me to question that because I'm not a professional, but over the course of years, I was diagnosed with multiple mental health diagnoses, and different ones too. And so when you start to learn about these different diagnoses and you see how much overlap there is between them, you kind of wonder whether this is just one larger thing. It's not separate things. And I came across, and my mind wanders a lot and goes off on tangents, so bear with me. Something I came across later was complex PTSD. And if you've never heard of this, Google it, read books on it. It saved my life in a lot of ways, coming across that. It's not something that's in the DSM just yet. It was recently um, established as a diagnosis by the ICD, the International um, something of diseases. It's the DSM for the rest of the International Classification of Diseases, which is what the rest of the world goes by, not the DSM. Anyway, why did I bring that up? Because mental health and addiction go hand in hand, and there's an extremely high likelihood that you've been diagnosed with a bunch of things and you also struggle with addiction and vice versa. And to me, in my own experience and my own amateur thinking, because I'm not a professional, um, this is all one thing. It's one tree, and we're looking at clusters of branches and trying to make distinct categories. This is anxiety, this is depression, this is bipolar, and so on. But it feels like it's all the same tree and it has the same roots. And another great guy that helped me a lot, his work, Gabor Mate. Highly recommend his books and or his YouTube um, talks. Those helped me a lot. I remember watching a lot of his YouTube talks. High, and because it's a strange thing, you know, you where you keep getting high, but you also would do anything to not be high anymore. It's like when you're sober, you do anything to get high, and then when you get high, you would do anything to get sober again. And I remember, I'm not religious or anything like that, but I remember just praying, like, please, God, just help me get sober. That's all I want, is just to get sober. That's I would have paid $1 million if I had it to get sober. And the desperation and the terror as well, you know, how many times have you flushed your weed down the toilet? How many times have you thrown it all out? How many times have you smoked and like sworn this is your last one ever? This is the last day. This is the last, you know, really enjoy it. And you get your snacks and your movies and your video games, you know, and you're like, this is going to be the last day or the last weekend. And then the next day comes, that's supposed to be your day one. And oh my God, it's like every ounce of your soul is screaming to get it. And you do, you get up and it's legal now. And you get up and you go to this dispensary. And I was so embarrassed. I'd be there right when they opened and the store would be empty. It would just be me. And I'd come in all disheveled. I was like, I don't know, 30 pounds heavier than I am right now because I get the munchies, like the wild munchies. And I just buy one because I told myself this is the last day. I'd ask him for the strongest stuff, and I get a two pape. Wow, I haven't said that word in a long time. And I'd go home and I'd smoke it, and of course I'd show up the next day again, just ask for one, and I'd see the same guy every day, and I'd come in for that same two pape, and I was really embarrassed and self-conscious, but I didn't give a shit because I just needed to get that relief. It was everything to me. It really was. I really was a full-grown man who felt like a scared little child who needed that pacifier. And that pacifier was, for me, weed. And everyone has, I've come to learn that all addictions are basically the same. No matter what substance or behavior, they're all attempts to escape pain, escape something unbearable, something intolerable, something that we just can't look at. And it temporarily numbs us, it temporarily um, pacifies us. It's it's a vicious thing, addiction. It's surreal me making this video, and I'm making this video because I want to contribute to, all the videos out there. There's so many people who are talking about addiction and trauma recovery and childhood trauma, and I've been helped by so many of those people whose videos didn't even get that many views, but they nonetheless spoke to me. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those people putting out videos like this. And I hope this helps somebody. And even if it doesn't, if nobody watches this, it's helping me right now to talk it out loud, because it's powerful to have our inner experience put into words and witnessed. And that's what this is, this little camera hole that I'm looking into right now. I'm speaking to you, but I'm also speaking to the collective, and I'm speaking to myself. And many of us weren't witnessed. We didn't have parts of us, of ourselves, witnessed when we were kids. I was a sensitive kid, and I sensed that, and this is really common, I sensed there was a lot of stress in the environment. My home, my parents were really stressed, and it took the smallest thing for them to lose it. And what does this do when you're a sensitive child? You learn to hold your breath forever. You emotionally, you don't want to add anything to the environment because you think it could make it worse. You don't speak up. You don't cry. Um, you learn to be a good little kid and hold it all in, and you learn to not ask for help and to figure things out all on your own and to regulate your emotions all on your own. And you go through the school system, and maybe you struggle in school like I did, but you're generally a good kid. You don't get into fights, you don't get into trouble. You stay out of trouble because you're always afraid of how your parents are going to react. That's your whole world. And if you're like me, when you were in your early 20s and maybe finished school, and suddenly you were considered an adult and needed to go out into the world on your own and figure things out and get a job and all that, you realize that you had no foundation. The first 2 decades of your life were, all of it was just a performance of pretending like you were okay, but really not being okay. And now you're in your 20s and you don't know who you are. You don't know what you feel. You don't know what you want. You don't know what you should do. You don't know what to do. And you're just so lost. And I know that in your 20s, in young adulthood, being lost is part of, it's sort of a rite of passage. That's sort of part of being in your 20s. But I think when you suffer from this kind of trauma, it's just compounded so much. And it's, frankly, you're just embarrassed to the degree that you don't have any self-esteem. You don't have any inner security. You're desperate for love. You're desperate for validation. And um, you're like a 20-something-year-old, but you're still a child. And it's okay. It makes sense. Don't be hard on yourself. And I know you probably are, because with physical nourishment, you grow physically. And for most of us, that happens. But emotional nourishment, it's invisible. Emotional nourishment being this connection, attunement, someone who's attuned to your emotional state, not theirs. Validation, someone who can say, hey, what you're feeling, that makes sense. attention. Attention is connection, right? Connection, it's love. Um, when you don't get these kinds of emotional nourishment and you grow up in a very emotionally deprived environment, you become an emotionally stunted adult and you behave immaturely. And the thing is, when a full grown adult behaves immaturely, it comes off as childish, it comes off as narcissistic. And I do think that a lot of people who behave narcissistically behave childishly. They don't get a lot of understanding because they behave in ways that are inappropriate, and they're very self-centered, and they can be manipulative, or at least the behavior seems manipulative, but really they're just like 30-year-old children, and they're trying to get their needs met because they were never met. And of course they would try to get their needs met, just like you and I would try and get water if we were thirsty, or food if we were hungry, or air if we were running out of breath. It's the same with emotional needs. And wow, this has gone for almost 26 minutes. Okay. I don't know if anyone's still watching this right now, but and I know I've covered a lot of topics here, and it's hard to kind of keep a video on one topic. I wanted to talk about cannabis addiction, but there's so much to learn um, about yourself. Um, Something that I want to propose to you, not as advice, and maybe it is advice, I don't know, but if you can see your addiction not as a problem, which I did for a long time, but if you can see it as an invitation from your deeper self to go on a journey, to go on your own hero's journey into the depths of you, and to uncover who you really are, and to understand human nature on a deeper level than I think most people probably do, um, that can help facilitate this process with more curiosity, with more gentleness. I've learned so much about this strange organism that we are, the strange creature that we are, this human being, and what we need, and what happens when we don't get what we need. Um, and it has implications for everything: human suffering, um, problems in relationships, mental health, and um, but if I'm to return to what I was originally speaking about, cannabis addiction, um, I know that getting sober sometimes feels like it's like you'd rather die. It's the only thing that keeps you, that makes life worth living. It feels like that. I know that. It's the only thing that makes life feel like it's worth living. And I swear to you, being on the other side of this thing, and I've been sober now for over 2 years. It's the longest I've managed to be sober off of weed and alcohol. Those were my two addictions. Weed was primary, though. Getting off of weed was the hardest thing yeah, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. Um, and it's tough because people don't take it seriously, right? Cheech and Chong and Pineapple Express, and I loved these stoner movies when I was stoned, but yeah, it's really not funny how much you're suffering from it. And know that you can stop. I didn't think I could, and I can't believe I'm here. This is very surreal for me to be talking into a camera because I was very and posting this and I have a TikTok channel as well. It's also called Kangsta's Paradise. That's where this started. Um, your brain can heal too. I know that your memory is shot and you wonder how long it takes to get it back. It takes time, but it regenerates. Your brain is plastic for the entirety of your life, even into old age. Yes, it gets less plastic, but it's still plastic. And one thing I learned is that, and I'll tell you, you'll need way more support than you likely want to admit. And you'll need more support than you feel comfortable getting. And I'm not just talking about therapy and processing things, I'm talking about peer support. Um, it was a long addiction journey for me. It was a long story, but a big turning point for me was going to an addiction program. And I didn't think I needed it because I guess I had read a lot about addiction and I had been doing therapy and I felt like I was getting there, but so I didn't think I needed it, an addiction program. I thought that was for more serious people who are more seriously addicted, but it was an outpatient program. And I was there for a year and a half, I think. And what I was surprised by was how much it helped to be in a group of other people who were also trying to get sober. And many of us who struggle with addiction, we're loners, we're lone wolves, and we don't really like other people, you know? For a long time I was like, fuck other people. I don't I don't like people. I hate the human race. I don't even want to be here. I hate that I was even born into this world, but I'm here. I'm just gonna get fucking high and fuck it all. And um I didn't want to connect with other people, but it's funny looking back, I needed that more than anything. And I didn't know that until I got into an addiction program and I got to see these same people. It was Monday to Thursday. It was during COVID, so it normally would have been in person, but it was over Zoom. And when I heard the other people speak, I saw that they were like exactly like me. You know, they looked different. Maybe they were more into alcohol than weed or more into something harder than weed, you know, slightly different experiences, but excuse me. Basically, we were all the same person. We were people who were in pain, were deeply insecure, hated ourselves, we're hard on ourselves, we're scared of being out in the world, um, and didn't know how else to deal with that aside from, you know, taking a drug or engaging in some behavior that was hurting us. Um, and I had to get to a really low place before I even considered going to an addiction program. So I really have to go to the bathroom right now, and so I'm gonna end this video. But if you're struggling with cannabis addiction, I just wanted to tell you, to say to you, if it is a problem, you know if it's a problem. I know it's hard to be honest with yourself because denial is part of addiction, but and don't be hard on yourself if you are in denial because again, it's part of it. Um, Took me a long time banging my head against the wall, figuratively, before I got help, and then I fell off the wagon and got help, and fell off the wagon and got help. If you never give up, if you keep standing back up when you fall off, and you'll feel insane for doing this, but because insanity, the definition is trying the same thing over and over again and not getting the same result, right? But the thing is, you won't try the same thing again, and you won't be the same person, because every time you will have changed a little bit, and the terrain will shift as well. But if you remember to be honest with yourself, and courage is going to be something that you're going to exercise over and over again. Remember, courage isn't not feeling afraid, it's action in the face of it. And I was such an afraid person. I was like a scared little animal, I felt like, in the universe. Scared of everything, scared of people, scared of what was going to happen, what wasn't going to happen, scared of what people thought, scared of people seeing me, scared of people not seeing me, scared of being alone, scared of being around others. Like, this trauma goes deep, but you can do this. There are resources. If you want to get help, you can. And God, I can't illustrate enough how amazing a life you can have getting sober. You can't even conceive of it. Like, and I know that's a lot, because when you toke and, everything, the colors are more vibrant, music and feelings and food, it just makes everything more alive, right? But it it doesn't last long, right? You build up tolerance quickly, and soon you're smoking and you're not even getting high. Your throat's burning, your chest is killing you, and you're barely getting high, because you're almost high all the time, even when you don't smoke. And I'm not a professional. I'm just a guy who really struggled with this, and I'm gonna make more videos like this, because I wanna help. Like, if there are people that are suffering, you can do this. I'm rambling here.